You have been assigned to work as a contract nurse for the Jefferson County Public Schools based upon the needs of a student or students which is determined by a healthcare provider's order. We will discuss legal obligations, general responsibilities, documentation, nursing assignments, available resources for you, bus rides, field trips, and emergency procedures. As a school district, we must provide any and all health services that a student may need during the school day that they cannot provide for themselves. The health services that a student requires depends on their health conditions and varies from administering a daily medication to one-on-one nursing services throughout the day. It is not an option for us not to provide these services to our students. Therefore, it is imperative for our contract nurses to be on time for their assignments and be dependable on a daily basis. Providing consistent and dependable care to our students on a daily basis is our primary responsibility. You must communicate with your agency immediately if you know that you need off, are sick, or are running late for an assignment. In the case of needing off, or you are sick, you must contact your agency according to their policy and should not contact the school or parent or guardian. In the event that you are running late for an assignment, you would want to contact your agency as well as the school as soon as possible. It is expected that you will arrive to each assignment 15 minutes prior to the start time of the service. If your assignment involves intermittent nursing cases and you travel from school to school, it is expected that you call the school every day prior to reaching the location to ensure that the student is in attendance that day. This is your responsibility, and services will not be paid if a phone call was not made to the school prior to your arrival. Jefferson County Public Schools does not require you to wear a uniform. However, we do have guidelines related to your attire. Please avoid wearing all white clothes, shorts above the mid-thighs, shirts that expose any portion of your abdomen, low-cut tops, or any clothing with holes. Be cautious with long fingernails, heavy perfumes, scented lotions, dangling jewelry, or any other inappropriate attire for the school setting. All facilities are now tobacco-free campuses effective July 2013. Smoking and the use of tobacco products are strictly prohibited at any of our JCPS locations and on field trips. It is expected that you wear a name badge each day that you are in the school. The badge provided by your agency may be sufficient, but some schools may require you to wear a badge of their own in addition to your agency badge. Each day upon arrival to the school, you must go directly to the main office and sign the visitor's log. This is a daily expectation that you must adhere to. There is absolutely no cell phone usage allowed while in the classroom. This includes no texting. Phones should be on silent or off at all times. For those nurses that are stationed in one school for the entire day, you must take a 30-minute lunch break. Please do not leave the premises during your lunch break. Please plan accordingly with school staff members when you will be taking your lunch and notify them where you will be in case they need you during that time. School staff members are trained on various health services, emergency medication, tracheostomies, G-tubes, etc., and can act as your backup during this time period. Please remember that the confidentiality of all of our students is of utmost importance. Our students are covered under the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act, which states that health information regarding our students should only be shared on a need-to-know basis. Any information that you receive regarding the students is confidential and should never be shared with the parent or guardians of other students. While servicing a JCPS student, please keep in mind that you are there to provide medical services only. You should not be asked at any time to provide any educational services while in the school. In addition, you should not be discussing any discipline or educational issues with the school staff or a student's parent or guardian. These issues should be addressed and discussed by school staff only. If at any time you have any issues or concerns regarding any of the matters discussed so far, please contact your JCPS Health Services nurse practitioner. Documentation. Upon arriving to the school to service a student, there should be a contract agency nurse folder there for you. Some of the contents of the folder may include primary care provider, PCP authorization forms, health service logs, and contact information for the JCPS Health Services nurse practitioner that is assigned to that school. These documents are necessary in order for you to provide services to the student. This folder is to remain at the school at all times. The primary care provider authorization forms are the forms that must be on file with health services prior to providing a service to a student. These forms are the doctor's orders that are needed and also include an emergency plan of action and contact information for the student's parent or guardian. The student that you are servicing will have at least one PCP form on file, and depending on the health condition, may have additional ones. There are 6 different forms, and they vary based on the student's health conditions. The forms that we have are titled Asthma Allergy, Seizure Monitoring, G-Tube, Swallowing, Feeding Disorders, Diabetes, Blood Glucose Monitoring, Respiratory Disorders, and other health conditions. Again, these are the medical orders that we must have in order to provide services to the student and must be strictly adhered to. At no point can we take orders from a parent. All medical forms should be left on school premises at all times. Health service logs will also be provided in your contract agency folder. These logs will be used to document on students without an individual educational plan or IEP. For any questions regarding this and which students have IEPs, please contact JCPS Health Services. Nurse documentation for students with IEPs is to be completed electronically using the online computer program in which you will be trained by your agency. Consistent and thorough documentation is mandatory and must be completed for all students in which you provide services to. It is imperative that you abide by the Kentucky Board of Nursing standards related to documentation and include the pertinent facts and details of your session with the student. Making the same note every day for a student is unacceptable, and you will be asked to revise your documentation if this occurs. Your agency's Director of Nursing will be reviewing all nursing documentation for completeness and accuracy. Accurately documenting the times in which a service is provided is also imperative. In the case of billing audits, this time and documentation will be reviewed. Electronic documentation should be completed weekly at a minimum. If you are having difficulties in completing this documentation in a timely manner, please contact your agency. Nursing assignments. There are various types of nursing assignments available within JCPS. Please keep in mind that these assignments are made based off a medical provider's orders at the discretion of JCPS Health Service nurse practitioners and can change at any time. One-on-one student assignment in the classroom. This assignment requires the nurse to provide direct nursing care to one specific student during their scheduled school day. This may also require the nurse to ride the bus to and from the school with the student. If you are assigned to a student on a one-on-one basis, you will need to contact the parent or guardian and set up a meeting with them prior to services starting. During this meeting, you will need to meet the student and parent or guardian, as well as familiarize yourself with the care you will be providing, the student's specific equipment, and how it is packed for transport, and discuss the bus ride as it applies. If you are providing one-on-one services to a student that includes a bus ride, please be aware that you should not be going into the home. Someone from the student's home should be bringing the student and the required equipment to the bus stop, and they should also be meeting the school bus at the end of the day. If you are asked to enter the home, please contact Health Services and ask your agency for liability purposes. You should never be transporting a student in your personal vehicle. You are not covered under JCPS or your agency's liability coverage if this occurs. School nurse. If you are assigned to a case such as this, you are placed in a school for a specific child, but you may be functioning as the school nurse. Often during this type of assignment, the nurse is stationed in a central location within the school and may be asked to perform duties such as medication administration, providing first aid to students, review of required health records, etc., as well as providing nursing services for a particular student. The determination of appropriate nursing duties for this type of assignment will be made by the JCPS Health Services nurse practitioner. Intermittent or scheduled visits. This type of assignment requires the nurse to service a student at a specific time that is determined by the healthcare provider. This type of assignment requires that the nurse arrive to their scheduled visits on time, which means arriving 15 minutes prior to the service start time. It is the nurse's responsibility to call the school each day prior to his or her scheduled time to ensure that the student is in attendance that day. Jefferson County Public Schools does not pay for a visit if the student is absent and the nurse did not call ahead. If you receive an intermittent assignment, you should contact the parent or guardian of each student to introduce yourself and familiarize yourself with the required procedures and equipment. It is not necessary to schedule a meeting. However, it is imperative that you feel confident in meeting the needs of the student and operating the equipment that may be used. Upon your first visit to the school, you should introduce yourself to the school staff. The school staff will be your resource for how to retrieve the student, where to perform the service, and where supplies and equipment will be stored. For all assignment types, it is imperative that you are on time for your visit. In the event that you are running late, you must call your agency and the school to notify them as soon as possible. It is extremely important that you call both the agency and the school. Your agency is responsible for providing backup in the case that you are unable to make it to your assignment and will need to know as soon as possible. It is the responsibility of the parent or guardian to provide any supplies that are needed to care for the child receiving contract nursing services. The only exception to this would be non-sterile, latex-free gloves that may be used for universal precautions, and those should be available to you at the school. If the supplies are running low, it is your responsibility to contact the parent or guardian to restock. Please do not wait until the supplies are depleted to contact the parent or guardian. You will want to give them at least 1 week's notice to provide them with ample time to get the supplies to the school. If you are having difficulties with this process, please contact JCPS Health Services. If you arrive to your assignment and the supplies are not available, please notify your agency and health services immediately. You will then receive instructions on how to proceed. Resources for contract nurses. Through your agency, you have a director of nursing who is your primary resource for questions related to assignments and basic nursing care. JCPS Health Services has 6 nurse practitioners, and each school is assigned to a particular nurse practitioner. The nurse practitioners are responsible for making the determination on whether a child receives nursing services, and they are who you should contact for specific questions related to the child you are caring for or any issues that you may have. Please note that at no point can a healthcare provider's orders be changed or not followed without first speaking to the JCPS Health Services nurse practitioner or the healthcare provider directly. JCPS nurse practitioners are also responsible for attending IEP meetings for students. This is not a meeting that you, as an agency employee, should attend without a health services nurse practitioner present. If you are asked to attend a meeting of this type, please consult the appropriate nurse practitioner. Bus rides. If you are riding a bus with a student, you must arrive 15 minutes prior to the bus pickup time. The bus may pick you up at the student's home, the school, or the bus compound. The pickup location will be communicated to you by your agency. If you are running late for a bus ride, you must call the bus compound for the student and notify them immediately. Do not call the parent or guardian. Once you have received your assignment, you will also receive the bus compound contact information. Field trips. There may be times when you are required to attend a field trip with a student. Depending on the type of care the child needs and where the field trip is located will determine whether or not you will attend the trip in its entirety or simply be asked to provide intermittent service to the student in an alternate location. We cannot deny a child a field trip due to their health needs or medical condition. Therefore, we must provide services to them during this time. The school should notify you at least 4 to 5 days prior to the field trip and provide you with details such as date, time, location, and directions if needed. You will want to communicate this information with your agency in order to ensure that all students that you see are covered for that day. If you have a question regarding a field trip, you should contact health services. Appropriate documentation and any medication that the student may be receiving should accompany the student on the field trip and be carried only by you or the trained school personnel. Copies of any documentation should be sent on the field trip. Please leave all original documents at the school. Emergency procedures and processes. Every school should have an emergency procedure plan. It is your responsibility to familiarize yourself with this specific plan in case of emergency. As a licensed professional, you must use your judgment at all times and notify emergency services when deemed necessary. You do not need permission to activate emergency personnel and can use your discretion in doing so. Each primary care provider authorization form has an emergency plan of action included on it. This plan gives you specific instructions on when to call 911 and when to administer any emergency medications when necessary. If 911 is activated, please notify the school principal and the parent or guardian of that child as soon as possible. In the event that EMS is called for a student, someone must accompany them in the ambulance if the parent or guardian is not there. If you are assigned one-on-one with a particular student in which the ambulance is called, it would be your responsibility to ride along with them. At no time should you sign the release form that declines EMS transport of a student. The only person that can sign this release is the parent or guardian. Diabetic student process. Diabetes is one of the most common healthcare conditions in which we may assign a nurse to a student. Here's the general process for calculating insulin doses and how to properly use our Diabetes Primary Care Provider Authorization Form. The Diabetes PCP form will indicate several things regarding the student, such as when insulin is to be administered, before or after lunch, and occasionally breakfast doses, whether or not the child can calculate their own dose or give their own injection, the calculation for determining how much insulin to administer, and whether or not the dose should be rounded. This form is to be used each time insulin is administered to a diabetic student and must be followed directly unless otherwise advised by the healthcare provider or JCPS Health Services nurse practitioner. At no time can you take an order from a diabetic student from a parent. These forms are updated frequently, and you will need to ensure that you are using the most current form to date. The process for servicing a diabetic includes helping with or observing the student taking their blood glucose. There may be times when this has been done by the student or school staff before you arrive. In this case, please double-check the number reported by looking on the meter. Helping them calculate their insulin dose and helping them administer their injection. Students will usually require two types of insulin calculations. One is the correction dose based on their blood sugar reading, and one is the dose needed for the carbohydrates they will consume. Let's look at an example. Insulin carbohydrate ratio dose to be given at lunch only. 1 unit for every 15 grams of carbohydrates eaten, plus 1 unit for every 50 milligrams per DL points above 150 milligrams per DL. You observed the student check their blood sugar, which was 300. Together, you both looked at the JCPS lunch menu, which has carbohydrate counts listed beside each food item, and determined that the child would have 65 grams of carbohydrates for lunch. Now it's time to calculate how much insulin to administer to the student. For the correction, you would do the following equation. 300, student's blood sugar, minus 150 equals 150. Then 150 into 50 equals 3. This student would receive 3 units for their correction dose. Now we must calculate their carbohydrate dose. To do this, we take 65 into 15 equals 4.3. Then we add the two together. 3 plus 4.3 equals 7.3. This student will receive 7 total units of insulin for the day if rounding to the nearest whole unit, and 7.5 units if the rounding is to the nearest half unit. Please make sure to check the PCP form to see when or if rounding should occur. Please keep in mind that our ultimate goal is to establish independence for our diabetic students. When at all possible, please allow them to calculate doses and administer their own injection when appropriate. Once you have administered insulin to the student, your service time is complete and you may leave the premises. It is not necessary nor expected that you stay at the school unless otherwise instructed to do so. Please keep in mind the physiology behind diabetes when caring for our students. Even if a student's blood sugar is low, they will still need insulin for the carbohydrates they will be consuming during lunch. When servicing a student, if their blood sugar is low, we would not give them a correction dose at that time. Give them a simple sugar, allow them to go to lunch immediately, wait until they are done eating, recheck their blood sugar to make sure that it is rising, and then insulin would be administered based off their carbohydrate ratio. In this case, they would only receive insulin for the carbohydrates consumed and would not receive a correction dose. Thank you for caring for the medical needs of our students. We look forward to working with you this upcoming school year. If you have any questions regarding this orientation information, please refer to your Director of Nursing or the appropriate JCPS Health Services nurse practitioner at 485-3387.